and welcome back to Wake Up Our Faith in Business. This is a show dedicated to helping you live out your faith where you spend the majority of your time, and that is in business. This is about bridging that gap between Sundays. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams with you live here at Wilmington Big Talker 106.7 FM. Many thanks to Nick Craig in studio helping produce the show. We want to thank our corporate partners for making this show possible. One of those being Chris Hutchins and his team at Guaranteed Rate Mortgage. Chris was a guest last week. Enjoyed having him on the air to kind of give us an update on the mortgage market. If you're in the business for purchasing a home or refinancing, give Chris and the team a call there, 910-344-0304. So Kev, you know, I'm loving and we're getting feedback from folks that are really digging the faith in business concept, and you know, just the approach that we're taking of helping people understand practical ways on how to begin to infuse their faith into their business. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's not about preaching from your desk or throwing Bibles at people or, you know, just simply inviting them to church. That's not bad in context, but that's not it either. And so we got to press beyond that. Yeah. And what does it look like? Yeah. And so, you know, we've got some great interviews already that you can check out on our YouTube page and a podcast as well. Cedric Harrison with Port City. Gosh, I can't think of the last name. He's got a great story, doing some really cool things here in Wilmington. But Support the Port, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. Will be with us next week. But this week we wanted to take some time and really begin to apply this idea of how do we begin to navigate by the Spirit? How do we begin to hear from God in our own lives in business and navigate others in a business sense? I think it's a really powerful concept.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think people, first thing we have to do is we're trying to break off the perceptions of man so that we can have God's perspective. We want to be able to see it the way He does. And so when we become like Jesus, then we can operate that way. And He operated sometimes just covertly, sometimes it's never fearful, but it's always bold but kind, you know, firm, joyful. It's got this wonderful heavenly mix of just power, and you can feel it when you get around people who are incredibly faithful, or they walk in this humility. You can just feel it. You just know. So we want to kind of gather that up in a bowl and say, take this with you into your day job, into your office, into your environment of commerce.
Sure.
Because that's where you spend the most time. So one of those, we talk about innovation and being revolutionary and excellence. We talk about a lot of things in this environment because there's a lot to it, but it's all ground level. It's all practical. You can carry it out. This is a little bit higher up on the, you know, you got to fly the helicopter up a little bit and look at it. But it's still very practical. So how do you carry out this thing where you know God's speaking to you and how to make decisions in business, which can be very difficult. A lot of dilemmas go on in business environment. You know, you have to let someone go and that kind of thing. So then also, how do you navigate through those kind of things when other people that have authority in that environment over you, but maybe not a spiritual authority. So how do you reconcile those things? That's the context.
Yeah. Well, it's a powerful conversation because, I mean, business owners and business leaders have to make decisions constantly. And there's constantly so many things that are driving the decision-making process.
Right.
You know, I remember when I was in the insurance business, there are requirements and validation schedules and production schedules and, you know, goals and all this different type of things that you have to abide by or at least put into play. And if you're not inviting God into that, then why bother? I mean, it's weird. And for years I didn't. It was like, well, this is just my work, and you know, that's my faith over there. But the point is to, you know, if you're either inviting the power of God and the voice of God and the wisdom of God and the provision of God into your business, or you're not.
Right.
And so you choose.
Yeah.
And we are for those who want to choose, of course, to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're coming from with this.
Yeah.
Instead of following all these other voices, you know, profit margins and, you know, production schedules and all the constant demands that create all this noise.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. it's the easy thing to do is to say, well, this is business, so let's be different. So let's be more warrior-like in the world's way. Let's justify things, and really, you got to go back to the kind of cliched question now, get your armband out from the 90s. It says, what would Jesus do? And would he say those kinds of things? Would he act on them? What he says is, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, pay your taxes. In other words, it's good. These are the kind of things where you can see that Jesus can walk right through that environment without compromising who he is and was.
Sure.
We don't need to do that either, because he is not only the personification of God, he is in us, and we have to take on his character, not just imitate his behavior. So we have to do that in business. So we don't need to say, rationalize harshly things like, sorry, guy, it's just business, nothing personal. Well, it's very personal because we're people. So unless you're a robot or a machine, it's always going to have a personal aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, how do you do this? What we're talking about again today is discerning God's voice.
Yeah.
So being able to listen to him in every situation. So in a business environment, what we kind of look for is wisdom. So where does wisdom come from?
Yeah.
So I'm tentative on the time and going on and on.
Yeah, no, you're fine. We got 3 minutes, I think. Yeah, 3 minutes before we got a break here. It's so where does wisdom come from? I mean, that's hypothetical. I'm going to answer you though. So wisdom comes from the fear of the Lord, and with humility. I mean, that's Proverbs. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Mm-hmm. With humility comes wisdom. Right. So for us, the posture is humility and fear of the Lord. Mm-hmm. And if that's what drives wisdom, how are we applying that to our work environment? Mm-hmm. And are we?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we're taught culturally that worldly wisdom is the fear of everything but the Lord. And in fear of the Lord isn't fear. It's not true fear the way that God tells us not to be afraid of the world. He tells us to fear him, which means respect and love him as a father, which is an affectionate term. It's not, he's coming with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
So, but there are really two types of wisdom that are godly. One is proverbial wisdom. That's why Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived. And also Jesus was the wisest man that ever lived, because he had a heavenly mindset. We have both because we're in a new covenant. We're way past Pentecost. We get both. So we need to take both into. This is something we get to tap into. One type of wisdom where God will give it to you, and it's mostly through experience. He said, I'll give it to you freely without reproach. But that means he's going to give it to you typically. He gave it to Solomon like that because he asked for it. And I don't say he won't do that, but typically he carries us through experience.
Sure.
And grinds it into us. But what happens is we learn through that, and we hold tight to that. But these are things like, how does this work? How does that work? This is how people are, etc. So that's one type of wisdom, is very earthly. The other type is the mind of Christ. And we teach all this in the Cleanse, by the way. You can get that. But the mind of Christ it's like the cloud. It's where God says, I'll give you the words, don't worry about it. He gives us wisdom in the moment. And it's so powerful, but we can't contain it. So these two put together, this is true wisdom. This is what you can take in any situation and walk right through it and understand what to do and how to react or how to be proactive and solve any problem. You literally can do that when it's God doing it for you.
Yeah. And Kevin, in your experience, where are business folks missing out in this realm?
Well, going back to our last segment or our last hour, same idea applies. Are you stuck in your mind? Are you walking by sight? See, a lot of people will, it's Sunday, so I'm going to walk by faith, but now it's Monday, so I'm going to walk by sight. And, you said it earlier, people tend to box everything in. So my faith is over here, my business is over here. Never the two shall intertwine. and that's silly.
Yeah.
You know?
The first thing I think about, and we've got to take a break here in a second, is that a house divided cannot stand. And so a business divided won't stand either. And so if you're dividing your business mind and your faith mind, it won't stand. You know, it might be successful for a season, but it'll be dust really quickly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the question is are we living and applying something that'll matter 1,000 years from now?
Right.
Which is one of the great challenges that we want to step into and want to encourage you guys to step into.
Yes.
You know, what will matter about your life in 1,000 years? Well, you're either inviting the power of God and His wisdom into your work environment, which is where you're spending your time, or you're not.
Exactly.
And we certainly hope you are. I want to encourage you to do that. Matt Hammy, Kevin Adams, short break. Back for more right after this. Hello, and welcome back to Faith in Business. This is the second hour of our show, Wake Up Our Faith. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams. We are the co-founders of Uprint. Our heart here and the purpose of this show is to help business owners, business leaders, people who are in business, wherever that might be, kind of invite God's presence and those practical ideas of how you begin to live out your faith in between Sundays. And we've got a great show going on today. Before we dive into some more powerful thoughts, want to recognize our corporate partners for making this show possible. One of those being Fountain Financial Associates and our good friend Chris Riley over there. They are in the business of giving clients and families a better life. They call it keeping promises. If you're looking for any financial advice and financial planning, make sure you call Chris Riley and the team at Fountain Financial, 910-256-8882. Kev, we're talking today about how we begin to let God speak in our lives and in our businesses and kind of carrying that torch there as a primary marker. And I want to just, before we dive into more content, just let our listeners know, like, this is what we do from like a faith-based executive business coaching dynamic.
Yes.
We walk with business owners and business leaders who are hungry to begin to activate and live this out in their business.
Right.
And so just to let folks know, it's a great resource. If you're a business person, if you're a business-minded person, an entrepreneur, if you're navigating life and business and you are a Christian, you call yourself a person of faith, and you're wondering how to do that, that's what we specialize in. So I just want to make sure people know. You can go to our site, uprint.life, youprint.life, connect. We can set up a call, find out where you are. But I just want to make sure people were aware.
Yeah, and it comes from business success in the world, and not just some kind of theological, philosophical argument. It's both. So if you want both, you want it from experience, and just jump in. It's pretty, and we're just passionate about it. So absolutely, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so we're talking about this idea of discerning God's voice and being able to understand that in us, in business, and what does that look like? And we use the premise of wisdom. God gives us wisdom through experience, but that stuff kind of hangs around. It's not something we get and then it's gone. You get it. It's the red pill, right? You get it through experience. You ask for it. God gives you those experiences. Some people complain about it. Maybe we all do to some degree, but then we look at it as an opportunity to grow from, and then God gives us authority in that area, and we carry that into our business. So we don't have to be afraid of circumstances. The other thing, and the even greater thing, because Jesus was greater than Solomon, right? And we're talking about two different kinds of wisdom, is to have the mind of Christ. Now, this is where you can cut through any situation and know what to do. It seems crazy, but it's not. It's real. But if you don't believe that, then you're going to go back and stay up. And I had a guy the other day telling me, "Man, I'm stressed. I've got some heavy stuff going on. I'm in my sleep. I'm thinking about this and maybe having to go through this huge decision in a corporate environment." And I said, "Look, man, you're not getting paid to work in your sleep, so stop." But how do you do that? So you have to have these things. You have to function in this. You have to walk with this as your preeminent navigation tool instead of all this other stuff.
Yeah. What happens, man, is when you begin living by that other stuff and you let that stuff creep into your heart, creep into your sleep, creep into your bedroom, That's what destroys your life, because it just robs you of joy. It robs you of time with your family. It robs you of intimacy with your spouse, significant other, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's seeking to take everything from you if you don't put it in its proper construct.
That's right.
And we we see this because we walk with people who is like, but I just got, no, at some point you have to couch the butts and say, I'm not going to let my life be lived this way anymore.
That's right.
I'm not going to let this type of thinking dominate my thoughts, and I'm not going to live in this weird, stressed environment. We wonder why cancer is so rampant. We wonder why mental health is so rampant. It all stems from the reality that we're bearing weight we weren't intended to carry in stress and fear. The enemy is taking it from us. We're letting him take it from us because we're not willing to live out this faith life between Sundays, which is where we spend the majority of our time.
That's right.
And so there's my little soapbox, not to dive into that, but it's just important for us to understand that there are grave implications on this that have everything to do with the well-being of your life.
Yeah, it's wholly good or wholly bad. It goes in the wrong direction and spirals down into every part of your life, including what you're presenting to your children, which is generational. So it goes on into the next generation. That's where you have generational strongholds, and that just goes on and on. So it is a big deal to get this. Even if you've come from that, then you want to. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Kind of weird. Even if you've come from the generational curse, you want to be able to take your stand and go no more. And my generations are going to be different. So it's just a huge thing. And tell me how much time we got real quick, just so I'll know.
We got 4 minutes.
Okay, good. And again, hopefully next time I won't have to do this, but so let's bring it down to earth. Practical example. I've owned multiple businesses, had a lot of success in that, and encountered just, you name it. I've encountered it from extortion to just everything in some fashion or another, temptations, all kinds of things. But I remember one guy in particular, I had hired him. He was he ran our accounting, inside accounting, and I had to learn the hard way. So that was the experience part. I gave him a signature stamp, and it wasn't long before he was running his own business on the side by buying equipment and everything from my bank account or my business bank account. And people don't know this. They just say, "Oh, there's Kevin. He's a surfer." But no, man, look, I've had incredible success and been through just about anything you can think of. So without looking at it from some high-minded place, just listen to what I'm saying. This fella stole thousands of dollars from me, and it took a while to get through and understand what was going on. So, but God gave me wisdom, and through that I understood, and my wife and I began to understand what was going on. Now, the other side of wisdom, the mind of Christ, what do you do with it? How do you deal with it? And how we dealt with this guy. So the quick, easy thing is throw him in jail, and that's not what happened. So there's a lot here. But when you think about Jesus walking through the room and dealing with that situation, that's how you have to think. And even if you don't have the answers, God will give them to you. So that's a long story, and it turned out really well, and we were blessed. And this guy was blessed. We did let him go, but he was cheerful, and it was just an incredible thing to see God work through that kind of situation. But that's an example of where you need both kinds of wisdom, where you need to hear from God, the mind of Christ, but you need to experience Him daily so that you have that kind of wisdom too. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, the reality is we face these situations every single day in business, and having the ability to kind of process it from both places is key. And inviting God to kind of speak into that, and not just bringing like a flamethrower to the place and burning it all down, or whatever the case might be. It's just give God the space to kind of step into it and speak, and then faithfully follow it out. And if you do that, I mean, again, there's situations and circumstances, and in fact, I was just thinking about one today. where I wanted to vindicate myself. I wanted to go, hey, this didn't happen and it should have happened, and I need to make amends for that. I need to go in and ask the question of why this didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And, you want to go, I want an answer. I want an answer. And even in processing through wanting that answer, I really felt like God just said, you do not need justification and answers from people. You're free.
Yeah.
You can choose to stress on this, or you can just let it go. And it goes back to this fruits of the Spirit thing. I mean, that was a situation, a circumstance that was just trying to rob me of joy.
Yeah.
And I could have played into it and continued to kind of let it fester, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna confront this and I'm gonna do all that kind of stuff. And God's just saying, no, that's not what I have for you here. I've got something ahead of you that's great. You can continue to stay stuck in this and miss out on what I've done, and you can mature through it and step into what's ahead. So it's real, guys. I mean, I just want you guys to know that this is just not ethereal stuff. This is real blood and guts, things that are being lived out.
Yeah. So when we come back, we'll talk about discerning the voice of God in other people in our business. What does that look like? What do you need to stay away from? What's okay to take another step?
Yeah. Great stuff, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. This is Faith in Business, part of Wake Up Our Faith here on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Matt Ham and Kevin Adams take a short break. Be back for more right after this. Hello, and welcome back to Faith in Business. This is the second hour of our show, Wake Up Our Faith, here on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM WFBT. Many thanks to Nick Craig in studio helping us produce the show every week. And Kevin Adams here with me. I'm Matt Ham. We're the co-founders of UPrint, Faith and Personal Development Organization. Kevin, we were just talking in the break about an upcoming leadership event that we have. There's a Rotary group up in Onslow County who is putting on a leadership development retreat or workshop for high school juniors. And we have the opportunity to go up there and connect with them and kind of share some thoughts and ideas on leadership, some workshop stuff and whatnot. And so I just wanted to let our audience, our listening audience, know that this is the kind of stuff that we do.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, we're reaching all age groups, within that age of accountability on. I mean, because we want the generations ahead to get this and be able to operate in this, and especially in their business community as they develop into business future leaders. Yeah. So, and you're leading that, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's cool because, you've got these impressionable, high school juniors, 17-year-old kids starting to think about what they want to do with their career, and they're being influenced in so many different ways. Yeah. And so the cool thing about this too that I want to mention is we've had a business partner come along and sponsor this as a way to pour back into the community. Yeah. And what it's given for us is just this awesome idea of saying, hey, let's go do this in other cities. Let's go do this to wherever. Let's go. Yes. And so we're developing a really cool, powerful curriculum workshop type thing for leadership development, whether it's high school kids, college kids, young adults, whatever, that can be taken into communities and poured into people. And then businesses can come along and sponsor that, support it, help pour in. So for our business audience, for our listeners or whatnot, I mean, if you have a group of people in mind, or if it sparks you in any way, I just want you to know this is what we do, and this is a tangible way that you can partner with us to help move this messaging forward, into our communities.
Right. Well, we'll let that sink in. You really think that through and just let that sink in a little bit. It's pretty cool. I do want to come back at some point and so keep us on track here with time and mention the Life Center and what that's about. But so it's kind of a soup to nuts deal, and it's growing every week, every month, more and more, and we're excited and humbled, but very, very joyful. So anyway, we kind of wrapping up. This is our last segment, is it not?
No, we got two more. This one and one more.
Okay. I can't keep up with it.
You'll need
a young man. Look, you're a middle-aged dude. I must be old.
We all have our roles, Kevin. I'll keep us on track. Don't worry about that.
So, this idea that we've got some examples and stories, and people have all kind of things that happen in business where they struggle, with making decisions to difficult circumstances, even temptation and infidelity, and there's just all kind of stuff in the
It's everywhere.
Yeah, and so walking through that, yes, we help train people in how to do that in a very dynamic way that isn't preachy but powerful. But that said, one of the core ideas here is to go from discerning God's voice from a place of wisdom, your own experience, and through the Word, and then the implanted Word where He speaks to you, the mind of Christ. And you have everything. It's like Jesus comes in and makes those decisions for you, so you don't have to stress over it. So you can stay in a place of joy, even when things are very difficult. So that's sort of the context.
Yeah.
And then we can get into maybe these normal. They're different, but the principles that we teach, just kind of the core values of what it looks like to live out your faith in business.
Yeah, I think I want to take it one step further and just say, what we deal with so often, Kevin, is people who are on the back end of failed business decisions, failed marital decisions, failed personal development decisions, failed spiritual development decisions. We get the phone call
right
all the time. Mm-hmm. With people who are struggling with these things that are a byproduct of not inviting the power of God into your life. It's not getting past go. It's not not letting God become this conduit that helps you navigate all of your life. So you pile up on this stress at work. You pile up all this posturing, positioning, trying to do better behavior, check off the boxes, do the right thing. All that stress piles up until it all explodes. And then people come and go, "Hey, I need help."
Yeah,
I need help.
They do,
and yes, they do. But what we're saying is, on the front of this, we want to be a voice of encouragement and a voice of joy and laughter, and say, "Hey, let's do this to avoid the pain down the road."
Right.
And so, one of the key things is, like you said, learning to hear God's voice in your business, but also learning to navigate other people.
Yes.
And what they say about this. So let's tap into this a bit, because in business, somebody's always got an opinion about what you need to do, how you should be doing something, and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. So we want to look for the signs of, when you're in a whether it's a lateral, equal type position with someone, or they are a subordinate, or they are they have some authority within the business environment. It could be a customer. Customers seem to have some authority with us when we're trying to meet their needs in trade. So whatever the case, we want to understand how to deal with people from a place of spiritual fruit. So there are times where people will ask you to do things that you will, if you're not in line with this and not hearing from God and led by this, that you will compromise. And that's the worst thing you can do. Even though in the moment it might solve your problem, it's not going to win in the end. And, an example we use all the time is we've dealt with some different folks. Now, our partners and our sponsors are great folks. We stand behind them. But other folks we've had communication with in that arena will say things like, well, we don't want to work with you because it'll alienate our clients, because we talk about faith. Well, and they call themselves a faith-based company. And it's very, very defeating and deflating. It's almost like denying Jesus. And I'm going to go that far with it, because it's not good. So how do you deal with that? And then, but you see other businesses, and we love Chick-fil-A because they've done this so well, and they are the best fast food company in America, probably in the world, because they've honored God. But they didn't do it by preaching. There's not a scripture in the chicken sandwich. They're just doing a great job and in working from there. But you know who they are. Everybody knows this is a Christian-based company. So that right there speaks volumes. So how to go from this kind of weird, sort of up and down, hypocritical, double-minded way of doing business, calling yourself a Christian but not really acting like it, to just being dynamic and watching God bless it and everybody wins. Part of that is understanding people and the fruit you see around them. And you have to move away from things that aren't healthy. So those things are, let's talk about the negative side, or bad fruit, a critical spirit. That's one thing. When someone's very critical, and there are times where you have to say, hey, stop. Mm-hmm. But someone lives in a mode of criticism. It's constantly critical. That's a red flag.
So this is something that's different than somebody kind of calling you out for something that you might have missed on. You're talking about somebody who lives in this kind of criticism, cynicism.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, a lot of times it's not criticism when you're being truth and it's coming from God and His Word. It all lines up. Hey, man, you're doing this. You need to stop. If that person has been given authority in your life, then you should listen to them like a father. But that's not critical spirit. A critical spirit is always putting weight on you, making you feel bad about yourself, and that's not good. So when you see that over and over again, and you don't feel light around the person or lifted or encouraged, that's a red flag. Another one is people, they will mirror, they will call out things that about themselves that are going on, but they'll put it on you. Some of the things, like you're manipulative, you're arrogant, you're a wolf in sheep's clothing. These are things that people have thrown at us in a variety of ways because we're bold in what we do. But the funny thing is they're really, what they're doing is they're telling on themselves. And we've seen it because it's got that weird narcissistic, not much fruit in it behavior, and where there's no vulnerability, no empathy, no humility. So we'll come back and talk more about it, but it's yucky.
Yeah, guys, we want to recognize one of our corporate partners. That is the Honeycutt Group, a family-owned insurance brokerage company with more than 10 years experience here in the Wilmington area. Give Chad and his team a call for any insurance needs. 910-338-1773. Back for more right after this. Hello, and welcome back to Faith in Business. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams, we're the co-founders of Uprint, the second hour of our show, dedicated to helping you live out faith between Sundays. We're all about bridging that gap and helping folks really just become excellent in what they do and living out their genius in the world. We have this organization, Uprint, which is our way of being able to produce content and resources for people to live this out. But we also have this beautiful nonprofit, which is the Life Center. And this is a vision for a facility that will invest in and develop people kind of for their heavenly purpose. And it's about helping people discover their genius, their gifting, and then living that out fully in the world, removing obstacles so that they can step into who they were created to be. That's the work of the Life Center. Those who partner with us, that's what they foster us being able to do. And we appreciate those who have an interest and those who are jumping in and diving in to help us transform the city that way.
Yeah, right on. So back to, and thanks for doing that. The Life Center is a nonprofit, it is a ministry, tax-deductible organization. So, just a reminder of that. So, we operate in these five basic ideas that we call the character of Jesus in business. And we use a little different terminology than the Beatitudes and similitudes and, meekness and all that. So what we're looking at here, we do that because as soon as you hear that in the business environment, people become offended over it and stop. They shut down and don't listen. So it's not bending the narrative. It's simply changing the terminology just enough, exact same meaning. It's like saying, King James versus, just using a wisdom, which you can use one of those two terms. You say King James and people are going to go, oh, right? You say wisdom, And what we back that up. Where does wisdom come from? It comes from God. So what we use is courage, integrity, vulnerability. These are the fun ones: vulnerability, empathy, and humility. And how many people in business environment want to go, oh no, those are awful. Right. I love it. This is Jesus. But in business, people just want to throw him to the curb. And it's like, that's smart. That's really intelligent. It's an intelligent way to fail. But you mentioned something last segment. Yes, we get people all the time coming to us in a mess. And I don't want to dwell on this, but we speak truth. We spend hours with them. We teach them things, and then they say, I'm in. And then, maybe something gets a little better or even gets a little worse, and then they don't want to engage. Now, here's the question. Why is that? What is the big thing they're afraid of? I'm not ready. What the heck does that even mean? I'm not ready. For real. Do you really believe? So this is over. It's way past time. It's way past go time. People have to kind of crap or get off the pot, so to speak. So I don't know if you have some thoughts about that.
That's you, man.
Yeah.
That's all you. I know that is just from years and years of lived out experience, seeing this happen, seeing it happen in your own life. And it's wanting people to just know the depth and goodness of walking with the Lord,
Well, they're wasting their life.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep wasting time. And I think that's where my heart is. It's not about patting somebody on the back. We do that when they need it, but
sure.
It's about saying, wake up, you're wasting your life. And you don't understand that God is good enough to fix your marriage. He is good enough. He will do it. Yeah. But if you don't really trust that, then you have to develop your faith. If you're not willing to spend time on that, then you're in trouble, and you're going to be 80-something years old and go, what did I do?
Yeah.
That's my biggest, that's where my heart beats for people.
That's what drives you. I mean, that's why Wake Up My Faith was, kind of the theme throughout your book, and that was the Twitter handle and your blog, and that's why the show is what it is. It's Wake Up Our Faith. It's just it's this cry in the wilderness to say, come on, guys, wake up.
Get on with it, because it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
But we looked at earlier at the fruits of the Spirit, and you can do that, love, and I'll just read them off again. Carry this with you, and think about the opposite thing when you're discerning how to deal with people, and should you really listen to people. Now, again, this could be 5 shows. It's so much, but think about when there's love, joy, goodness, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Now, people can be off or have a bad day. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who constantly operate in these things. And so you might want to start listening to someone who's operating in these things, because there's fruit there. But people who don't, when you start feeling the opposite or the counterfeit, we mentioned critical spirit and that type of thing, lack of humor or goodwill, always focused on what God isn't doing, anxiety, frustration, rush, harshness, contradictory behavior. And here's a big one. Inability to contain self, which self-control, the opposite of it. People that just bounce all over the place. This is one of the big ones, what the world would call narcissistic behavior. And so these 3 things add up to that. That's why we plugged them in as fruits, our own sort of businessy fruits. But when someone has no empathy, no vulnerability, they don't even know what it means. They don't know what it is. That's weird. And no humility. That's the road to psychopathic behavior. But back off a step, and it's narcissism. It is someone focused so completely on themselves that they have no way to see or feel what's going on with other people. Now, we've seen this, and we've seen it even in our own environment, not within our family, but it approaches us. So what do you do with that? In business, people know what that is. What do you do with that? So that's important. What I'm saying is we've got to learn how to recognize this and then recognize good fruit. That's the key in beginning to understand how to operate and make good decisions. People are going to tell you different stuff at different times. It's not about logic. It starts with, is there good fruit in this person's life, and is there bad fruit? And how you feel, from a spirit out, heart up, and then will. How does it all relate and connect? It's a lot. But
yeah, do you always have to do business with people like that, though? I mean, aren't there some type of business environments where you, just by nature, have to engage with folks that maybe don't share your sentiments? I mean, how do you begin to navigate through that? I'm not saying partner with them. I'm just saying, at what point in time do you wash your hands? And then at what point in time do you kind of invite someone in and say, yeah, you're a part of this thing?
Yeah, well, we're talking about two different things here. One's leadership. It's about whether you allow that person to have authority in your life or not. They may have a legal authority over you in your business or whatever. That's where you get dilemmas. You don't want to give them spiritual authority over your life if they are not coming from God. But God wants us to honor, these situations. So it gets kind of tricky. You have to do that through His wisdom, and you can't just logically figure it out. Or you stay up all night. But yes, we need to always be open to people and dealing with people in terms of to start out with. But we don't want to give those people authority in our decision-making process and leadership in our life. We don't want that if it's not from God. It will take us astray, and it's just bad news. Mm-hmm. Like the guy who, I mentioned a couple of segments ago who was, stealing from my company. I hired him, blessed him, gave him a good job, and paid him and all that, and he stole from me. What do you do with that? Well, what would Jesus do with that? That's what we're after here. So, yes, we have to deal with that, with element, with different people. But it's really about not allowing them to modify and change and distract and pull away our behavior. Enemy wants to derail us. So that's one way he does it. Could be someone who's very charismatic. But if you don't understand the fruits, and then again, these things, courage, integrity, vulnerability, empathy, and humility, you can be pulled off by the local Elvis.
Yeah.
And so you got to understand it from the ground up. Does that make sense?
No, it is. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's a great show today. We're kind of wrapping up here, and I need to recognize one of our corporate partners. Any final thoughts?
No, just we're going to talk more about it. So just step in, be encouraged.
Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We want to finalize and recognize, I should say, one of our corporate partners. That is Physical Therapy Services of Wilmington. This is ptservicesofwilmington.com, southeastern North Carolina, serving the area since 1983. Make sure you give Russ and his team a call, family-owned and operated, 910-763-8286. Thanks for tuning in today to Faith in Business. We'll be back next week for more. See ya.